Hello, hello there, fam. Welcome to another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. I'm Nathalia Melo, your host, and today I have a guest that I've been trying to get on this podcast for about 500 years. And finally, we made it happen. She's also going to be a speaker at the Powerhouse Summit, which I'm super, super excited about. And let me do the intro on how amazing she is. She's a leadership and behavioral coach who specializes in helping high achievers optimize their performance by increasing self-awareness, clarity, and direction. She has worked with over 1,000 top leaders, including several Navy SEALs, former Olympians, pro athletes, entrepreneurs, to help them break through mental blocks and achieve their highest potential. Her name is Annie Yatch, and I'm super, super excited to have you here, Annie.
Aw, thank you so much. There's no other place I would rather be. I'm so excited to support you and to help
And
as much as we can.
and I should have done that before we start recording, but hey, we're here.
We're here.
Um, I know I butchered your last name.
Oh, it's Yatch. It's not a big deal.
Yatch. Yeah, I was gonna say that, but I'm like, I'm not sure it's gonna
It's
be
the
very.
worst name, honestly. It's the worst last name. I'm like, as soon as I can, I'm going to switch that up.
It's very bougie though. He has a ring to it, like it's like any
Say
yacht.
yacht. It sounds hot. I was like, yacht sounds a little bit better than Yatch, but it is what.
We can change the pronunciation. Well, Annie, I'm so excited to have you here. And just for a little bit of context, whenever I talk about the importance of live events and being in person and connecting with people, that's how I connected with you. I was attending an event. You were a speaker at the event, and we stayed in touch.
We did.
Yeah, so super excited to have you here. So, Annie, can you tell me a little bit more about whenever we talk about leadership and behavioral coach and helping high achieving people? What do you find that are the biggest challenges that
Yes.
high achievers have?
Well, the highest achievers that I've worked with, we all share the same lies that we tell ourselves, and almost all the time we create suffering that is unnecessary in our lives. So, one common theme of every high achiever I've ever worked with is we all have a lie that lives in our subconscious that we are not aware of because our subconscious runs 11 million data points a second and our conscious mind only runs 40. So, it's near to impossible for any of us to find our own lie that's causing the most suffering in our lives. And usually that lie that causes suffering is causing us a lot of suffering in business because it's capping our potential at a certain level of revenue. So I would say the biggest theme is most high achievers have not even remotely hit the level of potential they can achieve because they haven't established what that lie is that's holding them back.
Interesting. And you work with a lot of entrepreneurs, but you also worked with athletes and things like that. And that's one thing that I find very cool about leadership and entrepreneurship and fitness is that I find that a lot of the things that apply to one apply to the other. It's wild.
Yep. The biggest thing I would say with all the athletes that I've worked with is there is a lack of purpose that happens after they hit their athletic goals. And then they try to move into the entrepreneurial world. And all of a sudden they're like, well, I don't have the same motivation. I don't have the same focus. I don't have the same drive. I don't have the same ability to connect because I'm not on a team anymore. So when I work with pro athletes or former Olympians, a lot of it is we have to redefine the purpose. We have to redefine what lights them up, and we have to actually discover what that is. And for a lot of those people, everything has been the game or the training or the pre performance, the post performance, and they've never had a chance to actually explore who they are and what they really want out of life.
I'm going off script here for my questions, but what you just described is what I see with a lot of the ladies that I work with who are very high achieving women. We're talking about very successful doctors, lawyers, C-suite professionals. And every single call that I get on, one of the things that I hear the most, they're like, I don't understand how I have managed to achieve all this success in these areas of my life, career, family, and all that. And I cannot get my shit together with my fitness and with my nutrition. And they start like, oh, I'm so unmotivated. I'm undisciplined. I'm like, girl, you went to Harvard. Stop it. Like,
That's a perfect example of how there's something in the subconscious that's blocking them for getting after this goal when in reality they've gone after all their goals and achieved so much, and usually goes back to either an issue around self-worth, like they don't think they're worthy of that fitness goal or that outcome for themselves, right? And so they've been devaluing themselves in so many different ways because the only way to achieve value is through achievements, right? So they hit all those milestones, but the achievement that really matters is that achievement of the internal. And that's something that a lot of women, we suffer from, and we create that suffering because we don't think that we're worth the outcome.
Tell me more. Oh my goodness, we're going to be here all day. I already know. So, talk to me a little bit more about the creating the suffering, because it is something that I see every single day, and it's like the martyr syndrome, or that like martyr syndrome meets people pleasing, and it's just a disaster. So, why does it happen?
Well, everyone's a little bit different. That's why I like going into people's root trauma, because if you can find the root trauma, you can figure out where this victim or martyrdom comes from. And for most people, until they see the storyline that they've created around that victim or martyrdom trauma, they literally can't work through it. And they will continue to create the same story over and over in a certain area of their lives because they can't see a different outcome. So it gets very frustrating, I think, for most women because we're like, well, we provide so much value. We please everybody. We take care of everybody around us. But the only person that really we need to be working on pleasing is ourselves, because from there comes infinite energy. So when
Mm-hmm.
women come to you and they're like, I don't have the energy to work out, I don't have the motivation to work out, that's because they're not fueling themselves up in any way, shape, or form. And there's no emotional deposit that they're putting into themselves so that they can fast track their energy.
It's kind of like um, they're holding on to the thing that is causing the problem while trying to avoid the problem, and it's
Well,
like a loop.
exactly. It is a loop, and it's because for every woman out there, you have a huge fear in your mind about something happening. And the more you try not to think about that huge fear, the more you create it and project it into every area of your life. Because your subconscious knows, if I keep this fear alive, I at least have a survival mechanism to stay safe, even though I'm miserable.
Okay, tell me more about that.
So,
Like dumb it down.
I'll give you an example. I had a woman that I was working with the other day, and when she was young, her mom had 3 kids, and when she was young, her mom's husband left her and abandoned the whole family, okay? Now this woman has become a mother. She has 3 young kids, and every day she tells her husband that he needs to leave her, he's going to abandon her because she is so afraid of what happened to her when she was a little kid, and she doesn't even realize that she's blaming him for all of her concerns and all of her issues, and she's actually not doing anything for herself because it's easier to blame him, just like it was to blame her dad for leaving.
Mm-hmm. So,
So
perfect example. Okay.
So what we will do is if we have a fear of abandonment, we will literally create scenario after scenario where we can be abandoned, and we tell ourselves we're about to be abandoned. So we try to create an environment where the other person will preemptively abandon us, or we will preemptively say horrible things to get that person to not want to be around us. Instead of just being like, hey, you're not my dad. What happened with my dad was a one-time offense. You're not my dad. You've been here for me day in, day out for 5 years. I'm living in the reality of this not happening and then working through that as a couple. So
Mm-hmm.
most people want to stay in their story because it makes them feel safe, even though they're miserable, because they don't know what's on the other side of that unknown.
I literally just recorded a podcast about the fear of the unknown, because it is absolutely wild to me whenever I speak with someone and they describe where they are, and it sounds terrible. Like crying, like, oh my goodness, I don't take photos with my kids. I don't have sex with my husband. I go on vacation, these expensive vacations, and whenever I get there, I'm covering myself. I don't feel comfortable. The only thing I remember, and it's like all this negativity. And then whenever, okay, so there is another way. It doesn't have to be this way, and people freeze. And it's all the excuses on the planet to not do that, and it's crazy.
Well, it's because they don't think they're worthy of it. That's the really deep core issue. And so for a woman to decide that I'm worthy of this, and I mean, I wanted to get in the best shape of my life. And it was one of the things that I'm like, I want to be 44, amazing shape. And I went through a very similar process, right? And you actually inspired me to go through this. And as I
Oh,
went through it,
thank you.
I'm like, there is nothing better than the feeling every day that you're building your own power and you're investing in yourself and you're doing something that only you get the benefit of. And for us as mothers, that requires us to flip the story and be like, if I invest in myself every day, my kids are better, my family's better, my business is better, and I look fucking hot when I'm on vacation,
Mm-hmm.
I want other men and women to like look and be like, wow, look at her. She really put some effort in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we have to change the conversation around how we value ourselves and what choices give us the most value and how we create emotional deposits for ourselves so that we feel the emotion of all these small steps we're taking. Otherwise, people think it's too big of a leap,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Why is it so prolific for women to not feel worthy? And maybe it's not that prolific because I have the data primarily from women because that's what I work with. You have worked with men and also with women. But I can't see a man who is an entrepreneur or who is a Navy SEAL being like, I'm not worthy of those golf clubs. Oh, better believe they're getting the fucking golf clubs. But for women, even like getting their nails done, sometimes like, oh my goodness, I can't, I'm taking away from my kids.
Well, it's very different, right? The male dynamic, I think that men don't think they're worthy of love in a relationship. And so they put up with a lot trying to figure out how can I be loved? How can I receive more love? For women, it's this concept that we've been conditioned our whole lives that we are supposed to give of ourselves. And that is how we feel rewarded. That's how we feel our value, right? So if we've tied our whole lives to us giving and receiving accomplishment or acclaim or rewards, and that's the only value exchange we know, we're going to be conditioned in all of our neural pathways that we have to overgive. And to stop overgiving and to stop focusing on ourselves, that's called selfish in our society, right? And so a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people are like, God, I don't want to be selfish. I don't want people to think that I'm selfish. And so there's this fine line we have to play around recognizing our own value and realizing that nobody matters as much as each one of us individually. Because
Mm-hmm.
you know this. If you don't take care of yourself, you have no energy for anything else. And you're just going to
Mm-hmm.
misery.
Yeah. And so, kind of going back to what you were talking about, how people react, because one of the things that I do, it's so interesting because right before we got on, I was speaking with a lady, and one of the questions that I ask people is, what was your upbringing? And
Hmm.
they look at me like I have 50 eyes. But whenever you learn about someone's upbringing, even from like a lot from a fitness perspective, it allows you to create a strategy that is going to align
Correct.
with like who they were when they were like 7 years old, which now is just a different dynamic of that. How do you see what are the different variations? Because I'm like what I see a lot is like loss of control, and their bodies is the way to control the environment
Hmm.
because maybe they come from abusive relationships or a household where there was addiction, this kind of stuff. So I see a lot of control, the need for control, and the body being the tool in which they feel in control.
Hmm.
What are the other variations that you see when you are working with people from a behavioral standpoint?
Well, it's sometimes tough to tell, but I think 100% I've seen that a lot. I think that what I recognize every time I work with someone is I'm not working with the adult person, I'm working with the 7-year-old because I think it's fascinating that most of us don't realize that the 7-year-old inside of us is driving our business and it's driving our interactions with other people because it's that 7-year-old that hasn't been heard. And so when I go back and I talk to people about their childhood, which I'm so thankful you do, because then it allows you to fully inform them and help them create the right program, right?
Hmm.
Um, I think I've seen that sometimes food becomes a way to hide from the
Hmm.
world and it becomes a way to have something that's just for you, right? Because there is no other way to give to yourself without feeling selfish.
Yeah.
And so, I think that between control, feeling selfish, hiding, and many times a lot of sexual trauma causes people to go to food or to go to unhealthy behaviors or habits, right? So,
Hmm.
um, but I always think if you can get in touch with that 7-year-old and figure out what that 7-year-old really wants, that can change the game for what kind of support you offer.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. So you've worked a lot with Navy SEALs, which is like the creme de la creme of special operations and all of that. And you have to have some kind of mindset to do what they do. So in your experience working with Navy SEALs and the tools that you have utilized with them and habits that you have found to be the most effective in the context of life, because obviously I would like to think that none of the ladies listening here are going to war, hopefully, fingers crossed. So, but how can these strategies that you've used with them, who are very strong-minded people, can women apply to their daily lives or to their fitness or to their relationships?
Well, it's actually interesting, right? When I first, because I'm a woman, right? And I first started working with these guys, and I was really intrigued. So I'm like, ooh, what can I learn from them about how I can improve the way I think about the world? And what I realized was the funniest thing about Navy SEALs, which is actually super inspiring once you learn it, is that they do all their mission planning based on an emotion. And if you were to say Navy SEALs are planning an impossible mission based on emotion, most people would laugh and be like, that's not what's happening. But what I loved about it when I researched more and I did more work with them is they plan for the impossible missions based on the emotion that they will feel in the future. And so when I work with women, the first thing I say is, I'm like, okay, let's figure out what is this emotion that you most want to feel in the future when you are successful and you hit all of your goals? What does that feel like for you? And then I will backwards engineer from that emotional state how to keep them focused, motivated, inspired, and on target. And I will remind them of that emotional feeling every day as we work towards their goals. Because you can't move somebody unless there's deep emotion and a deep driving purpose attached to it. So that was one of my favorite lessons from the Navy SEALs. And I just created a process to help people go through it and to get very dialed into their purpose. So any action is easier.
I love that because it's true. It's kind of like the Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why.
Correct.
If you don't have like a bigger purpose as to like, oh, I'm waking up at 4:30 in the morning to work out just because. No, like you're only going to be able to sustain that for specific, like when the motivation is running. But then at some point, the motivation is going to run off.
Right. And that's why for a lot of the people that I've worked with in the past, because they always ask me, because I'm this behavior change expert, they're like, well, how do I get my weight on track? How do I do what I need to do there? And the one thing that I will almost always say is you need to start slower than you think, right? Like, because want to maintain a habit, like for me, right? When I started getting into getting more fit, I'm like, I can't start by working out and changing my meal plan, doing all these things at once. I have to change my meal plan first. For the first 2 weeks, I have to be
Mhm.
really good about my meal plan. Then the second 2 weeks, I'm going to start adding in my workouts. I'm going to do
Mhm.
2 a week so I feel good that I can get two in, right? And then I built from there because I knew if I overloaded my system, I would feel like I was failing. And if
Mhm.
I'm failing, I'm not going to do it.
Yep. Yeah. And that's one thing that I talk a lot about, and people are like, "Oh yeah, no nonsense." But it's true is that people are so used to those extremes in fitness, and it's the same in the financial space. Oh, become a millionaire in 2 days and this kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And then you go balls to the walls for a short period of time, and
Not
then
sus-
after that you run out of gas, and then you're not able to sustain because you don't know what to do.
Well, I think people, everybody listening, women who are listening, like we have to redefine success for ourselves in life. And the way I look at success now is I'm like, it's got to be an optimized daily environment that I sustain over time. It can't be something that I go balls to the wall at because I will never maintain it. It won't be sustainable. But I think
Mm-hmm.
most of us as women, we don't think about, well, how do we create the ideal day for ourselves and work backwards? How do we make sure that we can weave in the things that are most important for us first before we end up giving to everybody else around us? I think more often than not, we're like, oh, these are the things that have to happen for our kids or our husband or our work. And then there's no room left in the schedule for us. Whenever I do my calendar, I'm like, these are the things that are absolutely necessary for me to maintain my sanity. And then I will add something for my kids or for my ex or for my business.
How do you, as a woman, because this is what I see all the time, I know that you see it all the time, I know that you probably experience, because you are a woman, you are a mother, and it's almost like it lives rent free in our brain. But how do you overcome that constant guilt that exists when you do want to prioritize yourself, and the guilt that already exists within you, but there is also the societal
Pressure.
expectation and pressure that I remember when I had my kids, I went to the gym and somebody was like, daddy's babysitting. And I'm like, no, he is parenting because we made them babies together.
Right.
You want me to explain how babies are made?
Oh my God.
So you know what I'm saying? So how how do we navigate that as women?
So the guilt thing is really, I think, it is an epidemic, right? As women, we are definitely feeling the pressure of society. And so the way I handle it is, um, and I don't know what you think about this. I don't talk about this a lot, but as a single mom now, I got a divorce. I had a lot of guilt from divorcing, and I felt like, I'm taking this beautiful family that I created and I'm choosing me, right? I'm choosing to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that I have the best life I can have. And I'm also choosing then to support the kids in the best way I know. But the guilt of that was really hard. So what I did every day, and women laughing, you might laugh as you hear this, every day I forgave myself. So every
Mm-hmm.
day I get up and I say to myself, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And I forgive myself for making any choice that I think isn't serving the greater good of where I want to go. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of Ho'oponopono, which is ancient Hawaiian work, and I'm certified in a lot of that. And so I used a lot of that to reduce the guilt. But then what I started doing is I started looking at how men live their lives and how they don't have any guilt for doing anything fun for themselves or for choosing to buy a cool piece of gear or a fun race car or anything like that. And I'm like, what if I could live in a world where nobody around me judged anything and I never had to please anyone ever again? So when I wake up in the morning, I run through that filter first thing. I'm like, I don't have to please anyone today. I don't have to do anything that doesn't feel good in my body. And so that became part of my mantra of I'm going to ask for forgiveness, and then I'm going to live in a world that I create and I project into everybody else where nobody can make me feel guilty for anything because I'm the only person that creates my emotional state.
Hmm.
So
But what when if you are in a relationship? I agree with you, but I'm just like running the
yeah,
different scenarios from my experience with, speaking with women, which I know that you know what question is. Um, what if you are in a relationship, in a marriage, or or a family member, a parent, an in-law that is almost like putting you in a spot to generate that guilt, even if you're like, oh, I'm not here to please anyone, but then everybody's like, wow, you're so selfish, you're such an
oh,
asshole, that kind
no,
of stuff.
I've been there. I have been there because I was married for 15 years. And,
Mm-hmm.
what was interesting to me is everyone's trying to guilt you all the time, right? Oh, you should be
Facts.
doing this, or you should be trying this, or you should be cooking this. You're not a good enough, a healthy enough cook for your kids. I've heard everything. And the way I looked at it was when people say those things to me, I think to myself, oh, they're telling me I'm Chinese. Am I Chinese? No, I'm not Chinese, so I don't have to listen. So that's how I got through it because, there are moments where, people in my family are like, oh, you're wearing fake eyelashes. You look so crazy. Why would you do that? Or, oh, you're going to the gym and you're working out all the time. You're getting so skinny, right? Like people say that kind of stuff all the time. And I would just, after a while, I'm like, thank you so much for noticing. That's awesome. I'm like, yes, you're right. I love my lashes. So I had to do a lot of work on saying, thank you so much for noticing. I love this part about me. And it's okay that you don't. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
what I consistently said over and over again. And now people don't bring it up anymore. And everyone around me is like, damn, you look good. I'm like, thanks. So
I love that.
evolution, right? But it's our job as women to bring humor to the situation, to value ourselves enough that we're not going to let somebody else's opinion of us cause issue.
What
For
if that's the spouse?
Yeah, I've had that too, right? Because I remember back, my ex didn't want me to get my nails done, didn't want me to get facials, didn't want me to do my hair. He was basically like, that's such a waste of money, right? And I remember that. And I remember the first time I said, you know what? It may be a waste of money to you, but it makes me happy. And I need as many beautiful things in my life that make me happy because women need beauty. We need to feel like we have control over how we look and how we feel. And so once I started pushing back on that and saying, well, these are non negotiables. I'm going to get my nails done. I'm going to get my
Mm-hmm.
eyelashes done and I'm going to have a gym membership and I'm going to work out. And once I started pushing back and holding that line and having a very firm boundary as to what was important to me, he got in line,
Mm-hmm.
saw the change.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about you being the lighthouse, you deciding, I'm going to be the lighthouse and I'm going to make the changes for me. And he will come around or she will come around as your spouse because you are holding the line for what you know works for you. And they're going to see the change in you and want some of that change.
That's that is very true. It's funny because we have a member that she didn't tell her husband when she joined, because she knew that he wasn't like going to be on board, like with the investment on it and stuff like that. And then after a while, she told him, and he is like the number one fan of the Powerhouse Academy now because he's seeing how much he has
Change.
changed. And then on the other side, I've had a call, like I had a call once with a couple, and it was I would say a couple years ago, and I still have like a bit of trauma from that call because I wanted to get in that computer like and shake everybody. Like he was like, "Oh yeah, she's fat." Like, "Oh yeah, she's fat. Yeah, she's a bit of a hindrance whenever we go hiking because she's so heavy she cannot keep up with us." And like saying it so none like it was nothing. And oh yeah, but I don't want to, invest in her getting better.
Well, a lot of men might not want their spouse to get better looking because if they get better looking and they get in better shape, then it's a threat that she might leave. That is also something that I've seen, right? So I that type of conversation would be very hard for me to listen to as well, but I hear it a lot.
Yeah. And which then kind of brings me to another topic that you talk a lot about, and it's very correlated to that, which is the, you know, gender polarity and, living in your masculine, living in your feminine, and, with women now being more in the workforce and having to be on that more masculine energy to get shit done. And a lot of the things that you're talking about requires a little bit more of a masculine energy to stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
So how do you find that line that you don't start to emasculate your partner because you are being assertive on the things that you want for your life?
So this is a really great question, and the only way really to answer it, to make sure that we're staying out of that emasculation zone of the masculine, is it goes back to the woman figuring out what is her relationship with her feminine side and her masculine side first. Because I could give a woman and a man tons of books to read to help them with this polarity concept, but the quickest way I've found for a woman to stay in her heart and understand the feminine and masculine is to have a conversation with her feminine and masculine side daily. And I know this sounds strange maybe for some of the women listening, but when I wake up in the morning, if you're in your masculine, you hear your masculine be like, we have to do this, we have to do this, we have to do this, get up quickly, we have to go run this errand, we have to take care of the kids. The feminine is there waiting to say something, but she's so afraid to speak because the masculine has been on overdrive, right? So when I wake up in the morning, I'll sit up in bed and I'll be like, okay, girl, what do you want to tell me? What do you want from this day? And the masculine will start. I'm like, whoa, 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 hold up. We'll get to you in a second, but I want to hear what she wants. And usually my feminine will be like, I just want to snuggle into the covers for like 10 more minutes. I want to be like juicy and delicious and like feel sexy. And I'm like, all right, how about this? How about we do 5 minutes of snuggling under the covers? And then we get up and we take a nice shower and we figure out how we want to tackle this list of the masculine. Can you guys work together on this? And what
Mhm.
I've noticed over time is the more the feminine and masculine are both heard and we renegotiate for them, so it's a win win, the less masculine we naturally want to be of our spouses.
But how do we have the conversations, around setting the boundaries of, I'm going to do this because it requires that assertiveness that sometimes you like if the man is really living on the extra super mega masculine, it's almost automatic that you will get pushback because you are stepping into a like quote unquote zone that he might not be used to seeing, especially like for couples that have been together for more time. And that's something that I see a lot with the fitness. It's like as long as it doesn't disturb the husband's
The equal
day-to-day operation, then yeah, you can do whatever you want. But the moment that the wife needs I don't know, like 30 minutes for herself and things like that, she needs to start to establish some boundaries. And because the partner is not used to it, then it
there
becomes a conflict.
So the way that I do this, and I talk to women about this a fair amount, right? Because I'm coaching the men, sometimes I'm coaching them as a couple, sometimes I'm coaching the women, especially when they're powerhouse females, right? So one of the things I tell them, I'm like, if we're going to create boundaries so that you can get what you need to have done, we need to spend time learning how to enroll your spouse in this process, right? So for example, there's a whole like beautiful way to get somebody enrolled in something. And so what I would do, like say I was a little bit overweight and I was like, you know what, I really want my spouse to get on board with this. I would spend some time with my spouse after having a great conversation with you. And I would sit him down and be like, sweetheart, I just feel like you've always loved my butt. And I would I don't know, how would you feel about me getting, like, a really tight, hot butt? Like, what do you think about that? How would that work for you? And then he would be like, "Well, God, your butt looks good now, but what are we talking here?" I'm like, "Well, I wanna wear skimpier bikinis around you. I wanna rub up on you more. I want you to feel like I want you more. I want you to feel like it's like I'm getting really sexy and, like, I wanna flash you a little bit more. I wanna be in this, like, sexy feminine experience." Are you, like, open to me talking to you about some ideas I have for that? Like, maybe some fantasies of, like, what we could play
Mm.
out as I start feeling better in my body? That's much more enrolling for a man than, "Hey, I wanna spend this amount of money on my fitness."
Mhm.
Right? So we have to figure out what is it that that man wants from us in that sexual, energetic intimacy space. And then how do I have a conversation about that so that he is invested in me feeling more sexy because of all the outcomes that he's going to get from that experience?
It's interesting that you say that because a lot of times when I do know that the husband does need to be part of the decision making, that's a big part of what we talk about because I find that a lot of men don't understand how it is impacting everybody's lives whenever their wives don't feel their best.
Correct.
And then for the woman, she lives in that kind of like state of self-sabotage, and it's just like a loop. It's
It
like
is.
they self-sabotage when then there is no like reinforcement for the spouse to be on board because every time she self-sabotages and quits halfway through. So why would a husband be supportive of that if every single time that she tries it she gives up halfway through because she's self-sabotage, and it just keeps on.
Yeah.
So how do you stop this self-sabotage?
So stopping self-sabotage, it's really for me what I've realized in all the coaching is in order to stop self-sabotage, we as women have to be very clear on how we sabotage ourselves and the negative repercussions of doing that. And we also then have to look at okay, if we were to maintain the same pattern for the next 5 years of our life, where are we going to be? It's that constant conversation in our head of is this a dangerous trajectory for me to be on? So like for me, I felt like I was in good enough shape, so I'm like, "Oh, do I really have to do anything? Like, really, is this that big of a deal?" Which is a stupid thing for me to say, right? I realize that now. But in the moment, I was like, "Well, I could put in a little bit of effort and maybe I would change my body." And I realized, I'm like, "Oh my God, that story right there is sabotaging me from getting to the gym, eating healthier, dialing in my meal plan, dialing in how I want to look." I'm like, "That story's got to go." So if a woman doesn't know what her story is and she's not clear on it, then that story is going to weave in from her subconscious in very like tricky ways to thwart her. So I think the key is you have to know the story that you're telling yourself that you no longer want to live in order to really jump into this journey and take the most advantage of it. Does that make
I 100%. And it's interesting because I literally just made a post today. At the time of this recording, it's going to be a couple weeks, a few weeks later, which was one of our members telling us how she, since joining, which was 2 years ago, her pay has increased by 200%.
yes.
200%.
Mhm.
Before her pay increase were, and I sent her a message. I was like, was that a typo?
Right. Right. Is it
Like,
20% or is it 200?
yeah. And then she was like, no, it's 200%. And I was like, okay, but what was it before? Because if before was like, I don't
Right.
know, 75%, then 200, yay, we're happy. But that's not a big discrepancy. Oh, no, before it used to be between 2 and 4.
Wow.
So how do you think that putting effort into feeling your best, feeling better about yourself and feeling in control, and like how does do you find that the fitness and the certainty and the clarity on the purpose and all of that impacts career ascension or earning potential? How have you seen that with the high achievers that you work with?
So I've got to say very, very clearly and plainly to everybody listening, I had somebody say to me once, he's like, "How can anyone take you seriously if you don't take yourself seriously when it comes to your fitness?"
Ooh.
That has always hit me very hard because there are a lot of entrepreneurs that are way overweight and they're trying to tell you to follow their program, do what they do. And it was very hard for me because I'm like, but if you're not taking care of yourself, how can I trust this program is going to take care of me?
Mhm.
right? And so what I noticed, and this is just for me personally, right? When I started taking care of my health and my fitness, I took a company from making 40 grand a month to making 200 grand a month consistently, right?
Mhm.
So when we talk about career and earning potential, your fitness has the chance of taking you on a journey where every aspect of your life you will look at through a different lens. You will look at how you engage with your children. You'll have more patience, right? And that, as a mother, changes the game. Also, I started working out, and my little kids will come up and work out with me. And now they're like, Mommy, are you going to do the workout today? Why aren't you
Mhm.
doing the workout? Right. So, like, I heard also there's a percentage that a child's ability to work out and to have a sustainably healthy lifestyle is a direct link to the mother being healthy and fit
Yep.
and working out in front of them. And when I saw that statistic, I was like, I will work out every week so my kids see this, so my kids have a chance to have the healthiest life they can possibly have. So I think if you look at fitness through this world of every fitness journey is going to take you to higher growth potential, more wealth development. It's going to create more connection with your spouse, more connection with your friends. Like, yeah, there might be some limitations on what you eat and when, but the bigger journey that you are on is this journey of you reaching your higher potential, which is something that we're all here to do. And life would be a waste if we didn't do it.
I I have absolutely nothing to add because I do and that's the part that I think drives me absolutely crazy is that I think that everything in life, relationships, your relationship with your husband, or your relationship with the person that you work with, your relationship with your children, with your friends, is impacted when you're not feeling your best.
Yes, 100%. Because they can feel you energetic not being there. And
Yep.
I a fitness journey gives you the ability to feel the energy of what you stepping into your power is supposed to feel like.
And it's interesting because it's and that's the thing that I find that a lot of people miss, because I had a conversation the other day and the lady's like, oh, if nothing changes, I'll just get surgery. But the thing is that surgery, and listen, I've had surgery.
Yeah.
I've had a very pro surgery. But the thing is that surgery to fix something that can be quote unquote fixed with you honoring the promise that you made for yourself,
Mhm.
that's where the character is developed.
Correct.
And you cannot replicate that with a surgery.
You can't. But women have to be ready to go on the journey to find themselves again. Because I know for a fact that most of the women listening, the best journey of your whole life is when you re-find that part of yourself that you've been missing. And I'm 100% sure that you cannot get there unless you give yourself the chance to go on a fitness journey. You could, because people talk about this all the time. They're like, oh, I can do a psychedelic journey, or I could do this breakthrough work mentally and emotionally. The fitness journey is the quickest way to discover who you are and how you can show up. And it's the easiest thing for people to see and be like, wow, somebody's really putting an effort in their lives. And that inspires thousands of people around you. It's a ripple effect that energetically you can't beat.
And it's just to kind of like piggyback on that, because you said about like the psychedelic journey, and I'm sure that all these other things have benefits, but ultimately the way I perceive it is that they become patchwork and noise, that the person is trying to put the burden of doing the work on other things or other strategies or on the psychedelic. And then if it doesn't work, it's not because of them. Oh, it didn't work because maybe the psychedelic tea wasn't good enough or whatever. But in fitness, you cannot pass the blame. You either do it or you don't. And that's, I think, where the character is built.
Yeah, and I think, it's a crucible of sorts, right? And I think for many women, like it might not be their time. It might not be like the right time for them to do it. But if you choose to step into that, you learn so much more about what you're able to do, right? And I think sometimes we let the hard things block us. Like I know when I started lifting much heavier, I was scared to go to some of those workouts. I was scared to go to the gym some days because I'm like, shit, this is gonna hurt. This is gonna be intense, right?
Yeah.
But I loved it at the end because I'm like, look what I just did. Like, can you
Yeah.
believe I just did this, right? And a girlfriend of mine, she was trying to lose 40 pounds, and we sort of tag team together and went on this journey for 2 years. We're the closest we've ever been. We have the most fun we've ever had. Like, the fitness journey for her, to watch her go through it and to watch us do it together, we just agree. We're like, we would never be who we are today if we hadn't done this journey.
That's interesting, and I have a question because I was looking at a research. Let me see if I can find it here. But it was data on, and kind of going back to the polarity side of things and relationship and the ripple effect on fitness and how you feel about yourself. Because there is a recent study talking about how whenever you get into a relationship, a long-term relationship, that that's something we always knew, like by observational, but this is an actual research that people kind of let themselves go
Yeah.
and stop caring for themselves. It's almost like, oh, I don't like need to look good anymore. How do you overcome that from a behavioral standpoint?
Well, I think that's a conditioned response from our society that needs to change dramatically, right? Because I think the more you value yourself, like my ex, and this probably sounds horrible, right? But my ex was a Navy SEAL, and he would say to me, he's like, if you get fat, this is over. And that wasn't why I stayed fit. I stayed fit because I needed to value myself, whether I was in a relationship or I was out of the relationship. And I'm like, if I let myself go, then I will not be happy with who I become at the end of this journey. And so I think that if we can look at the relationship as a choice every day, it's the same thing as our fitness and taking care of ourselves. It's a choice every day. Do we say yes to being in this relationship with this person? And saying yes to be in the relationship means I have to say yes to taking care of myself so I can actually show up. I think that we all become so complacent because we stop putting in effort and we stop making that consistent choice. It becomes a default action. And that's where we lose our power in relationship.
Yeah, I actually created I had a reel on my Instagram the other day talking about that, and oh my goodness, people lost their minds because, but you are gonna love your spouse regardless, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm gonna love him a bit more if I know that he's taking care of himself and he's looking good as hell. Like,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know what I mean? Like, he's an amazing man, but he's also freaking easy on the eye.
Well, right. I mean, if you're going between a guy who's not in great shape and a guy who's in killer shape, do you think you're going to look at the guy in killer shape? Yes, you will. You'll give him more of a chance and you'll open up more of your heart, right?
Yeah.
So I think the key here is we all have to start valuing our fitness and our health a lot more. And that requires us to shift our lifestyle so that fitness can be at like one of our top ideals. And if you're with someone who doesn't have that as a top value, then that's something you really have to look at, right? Because again, we are only given one vessel. If we don't love on this vessel and put into it everything that it needs, we're not going to be able to produce the impact in the world that we're being called to create.
So, how can women recognize any when they're letting external expectations or societal norms influence their fitness journey, and what kind of strategies would you share to help them reclaim?
I think the key is we have to look at things that are distractions. We have to be
Mhm.
to identify what the distractions are at the outset of the journey and say, these are the things I know that will distract me, right? For me, it was business and my kids, because I knew that those are the top two things. And also, how cold it gets here, because someone
Mhm.
going to the gym when it's cold, right? So I put that down at the very outset. I'm like, what are my contingency plans for when these things go awry? And I came up with my contingency plans right out of the gate. So I'd be like, okay, if this shows up, how am I working around it to make sure I still get to what I need? So we have to identify the distractions or the people that will most likely try to hinder our journey. And we have to decide every single day that our progress is more important than their opinion. And what I see
Mhm.
all the clients I work with is I'm like, we only listen to the opinions of people that truly love us, truly support us, and truly know us. So anybody who doesn't know us, love us, and truly like understand who we are, their opinion doesn't get to matter, even if it's a family member.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I had to change the way I defined relationships and goal setting and success. And I had to look at the distractions and remove them from my life. And I'm not
Yeah.
perfect. Nobody
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, and again, like whenever we're talking about kids, like you can remove your kids from like, but they are going to be like a distraction. Kids get sick, and then you have like the 50,000 emails that you get every single day about something that is happening in the school, and they need to show up with green hats that you find out the night before. It's ridiculous.
It's so ridiculous. I know. And what I do in those moments, and I'm like, some of these things for the school, I'm just not going to do. But I sure as heck am going to make sure that if I have to get a workout in, I'm bringing my kids with me to the gym. Like I'm not supposed to bring my kids with me to the gym. I bring them to the gym. I put them with an iPad. I put on National Geographic. I tell them exactly where I'm going to be. I check in with them every 10 minutes because I'm creating an environment where I can be successful. And do you think 30 minutes of them watching National Geographic is really going to destroy their brains? No, it's not. It's going to give me the chance to get after what I need to get after.
A
So I
hundred
have
percent.
to let go of societal constructs, right? That's why we're all here. Decide if something that society tells you is real for you or not, and be willing to let anything that go that doesn't serve your greater self.
Why is this like all beautifully easier said than done,
It's
especially
all
for women?
said and done because we are conditioned to be martyrs and conditioned to be people pleasers. And that is not who we are. That's just the trauma pattern that has helped us survive. So, as women, if we're willing to let go of that trauma pattern and really step into our power of this very beautiful masculine feminine that can be balanced within us, there's so much more that we can create in our world and we'll be so much happier. But we have to let go of the conditioning.
Yeah, no. So, what do you find, Annie, with especially high achieving women? That is the thing. You talked about the stories they tell themselves, the people pleasing, the self sabotage. Is there anything else that you find that high achieving, especially women, in the context of the audience that I know that we have, that hinders them from reaching their true potential? I have some ideas, but I would like to see your.
Well, there are a couple of things. The first is most high achieving women will say to themselves, if I don't do this, who will? And then they'll also say, no one can do it like I can do it, so I need to do it. And those two things, like I have become a master delegator because the more I delegate, the more time I get for me and the happier I am. And so I don't have to do it all. I don't need to do it the best. I am not the best at everything. I'm literally the best at maybe two or three things, and everything else needs to be delegated. But I think as mothers, we're told that we have to do everything for our kids. And so deciding, no, I'm going to get a cleaning lady for my house, or no, I'm going to, like, I have a amazing cleaning lady that works with me. And she's like, you're the only single mom that I ever clean for. She's like, how do you do it? And I'm like, because if I don't have a clean house, I can't create anything in business for my amazing clients to make sure that our lives are the best that they can be.
And then I can pay you, and it's just a loop.
You as well. It's a loop, right? So I think that if we're high performing women in our businesses and we're not high performing women in our fitness and our lives, there's a lack of congruency there that we really have to look at because we're worthy of both and we can
Hmm.
have both. It requires us to reset our societal constructs and our boundaries and our distractions.
It's almost like we've been speaking the same thing to different people, because that's what I talk all the time about delegating. I don't know what it's like, the whole idea, oh, because on Sunday I have to do all my laundry. Like, for me, my successful life in my mind was the day that I could pay for somebody to come to my house and do my laundry.
Yeah, that's true.
And people are like, oh, but that is such a waste. And I'm like, that is how I choose to, spend my money. People will go to restaurants 3-4 days a week and spend well over, $150, and I pay 120 for someone to come and do my laundry. That is a choice.
It's a choice, yeah. And everyone's going to make different choices, but letting mothers know that some choices are more valuable than others' choices. And if they give themselves the chance to experience that choice, they might decide, yeah, this is great. This is the best thing I've ever experienced, right? So I think that what I found too is that when I talk about these things with a mom and she's not ready to go there, that just means she's not ready on her journey to step into more of the power of who she is. And that's okay. I never judge anybody for that. What I do ask though is I say, I want you to remember this conversation so that 2, 3 years down the road, when you decide to start valuing your time because ultimately it goes back to, as a woman, we don't value our time. We value everybody else's time. So when
Hmm.
we decide to start valuing our time, that's when everything gets real interesting. Because now, if we value our time, anything we want to create is actually possible.
Hmm. And I think that also kind of piggybacking on that as well with the people pleaser and like people pleasing and the fear of delegating because you don't think that you're worthy of that kind of investment is the every yes that you're saying is a no that you're saying to something else.
Yeah.
And
The way I say that is I always say, when I say no to something, it's a God yes for me. It's
mhm,
me being more in alignment with everything divinely orchestrated that I want in my life. And we have to say no. Otherwise, we never know what our yeses are.
100%. Oh my goodness, we could talk all day about all of this because it is something that I'm very passionate. And I find that, we're very passionate about the same thing, you and I, and is you are working in one side of it with it. And I'm working with it on the like fitness aspect, but it's almost like one cannot live without the other.
True. True.
And it's pretty like pretty magical whenever you see people's lives transform and like your pay increase by 200%. Like how much does your life change when you're
Every
getting a pay increase by 200%?
Well, that's why you and I do what we do, right? Because if we can change one thing in the mindset, we can change one thing in the fitness realm, every ripple effect of that is exponential.
Yeah.
So I'm just glad that we know each other and we can help these women in this way, because there's nothing better than watching a woman step into all the power, all the fitness, and to see her transform her entire life. Like, that's why we're here.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I'm very excited. Like, I truly mean it, Annie. I'm very excited about having you in the Powerhouse Summit to talk a lot more about strategies to overcome self-sabotage and, how to properly value yourself and all of kind of more practical
Yep.
conversations around what we touched on here today, because that is actually one of the biggest battles that I have as a fitness coach. Even though I do have like a counselor and we work a lot with this, but there are so many other things that we also have to work on, like the relationship with food, the all or nothing mentality, and things like that. That having you speak on like in a more dedicated format for self sabotage, because we do see this come up time and time again, rinse and repeat all the time. So I'm very excited.
I can't wait. I'm so thrilled that I get to be a part of it. And thank you for doing this for women, because I think it's obviously your gift, and I'm just so honored to be a part of it.
It's interesting because we have two speakers on behavior and leadership and things like that. And whenever I presented even to my team the lineup of speakers, they were like, "But leadership, what does it have to do with fitness?" And I'm like, "Everything."
Everything.
Like
Yep.
you cannot have one without the other. And I think that if we're not, because no women, no one woman lives in a vacuum where it's just like, oh, it's just the fitness. No, it's the same person that is dedicating her time to the fitness is also going to dedicate her time to being a leader in her job and being a good mother and all of that. You cannot separate.
You shouldn't separate. Many women do, but we shouldn't. It's
Well,
all
they
they try.
try
That's true.
because you can separate. If you're having a stressful day at work, it's going to be very difficult to completely 100% put that aside. And it's also going to be very difficult if you feel like shit within yourself to show up to work and that not impact.
Yep. That's true. Well, I can't wait. I think we're on something exciting here, and I can't wait to see what everyone thinks about it when we're at the summit.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. Annie, can you tell us a little bit more on how people can find you, where you're at, what do you do, and all the things? Because I follow you and I find value in a lot of the things that you put out. So I would love for our listeners to check it out too.
Sure, you can find me on Instagram, just northstar.annie, or if you want to send me a personal email, Annie at Northstar Leadership School. It's very long, .com. That's the way to get in touch. A lot of people have like very personal questions they want to ask, so using the email is best for that, or you can always just message me on northstar.annie Instagram.
Well, and we're gonna put all the links, guys, in the show notes. And any it's interesting. I'm going to tell you a story. I don't think you remember this, Annie. The first time that I met you, you spent like literally, like we started talking and you coached me over a drink for 40 minutes.
I remember.
And you like, and that was one of the things that caught my attention, is that you really wanted to be a part,
Yeah. I
like
wanna
to hang out and to help people. And I was blown away.
Oh, I just there's nothing that makes my heart feel happier than, like, having a beautiful connection moment and supporting someone because you never know what they're gonna take away, and I'm very unattached to anybody ever working with me because that's not what I care about. I care about, can I give enough value in every moment with somebody that they can take something away and it changes their life? That's all I care about.
I love that. I love that. Any shows, I have to say, any shows. So thank you. Thanks. I'm very excited. And I can't wait to see you and give you a hug.
Oh, great. Thank you. Can't wait.
Thank you so much, guys. And I'll see you next week. Bye bye.